This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision-crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision-crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
In 2013, director Denis Villeneuve and star Hugh Jackman gave the world a quietly violent thriller that keeps you captive till the final moment.
In 2025, we could not have picked a better thematic bourbon to pair this thing up with, Brad.
Better?
More apt?
I think worse might have been the word.
More apt. Let's say that.
Oh, man. The film is Prisoners.
The whiskey is Almost Old Bones Bourbon.
That's bad, bro. Oh, we're going to review both of those things today here on
The Film and Whiskey Podcast. Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And this week we are looking at the 2013 Denis Villeneuve film, Prisoners. Dude, I've been waiting a long time to watch this one with you, and I fear that I don't think I ever tried to hype it up as like this is the best movie you'll ever see, but I fear that just like kicking the can down the road so long really did not set you up for what an absolute downer of a movie this is going to be for you.
I think if anything, I have worked out my, as you said last episode, I've worked out my cinematic critique muscles enough that I think I have enough heft to actually like say why I don't like this movie.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because the thing is, this is like a solid 9 out of 10, really well made, Mystic River-esque type film,
okay.
Right?
Sure.
I don't like the decisions that Denis makes.
Now, are you talking like
the moral, like emotional decisions that he makes throughout this film?
So here's the thing. You're supposed to bury the lead a little bit, man. Like we are 1.5 minutes into this episode, and half our audience knows exactly where we're going already, and the other half is just along for the ride, and they're waiting for the whiskey segment. So hang with us. But I want to drill down immediately on like what you're talking about here. So you say you don't like this movie, and it sounds like what you're saying is like, I feel gross having watched this movie, and I don't like where it goes.
No.
And you also said I don't like the decisions that Denis makes. So is it like where the story goes? Because that's a writing thing. Or is it like visually decisions that the director is making that irk you?
Oh, it's absolutely Denis' decisions. And sure, like the script maybe calls for it, but specifically, this is a movie about how everyone is a prisoner to their own story, right? Do we want to do Brad Explains real quick? So get it out of the way.
This is the weirdest episode we've ever done. This feels so chaotic, dude. Sure, let's do Brad Explains.
Brad's gonna give us the movie plot with only 60 seconds ticking on the clock. So let's go ahead and hear your take with this little segment that we call Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part. You know what? No, we're not gonna do Brad Explains. This feels so chaotic. Yeah, we'll do Brad Explains in like 30 seconds. Let me say this. It's still so early in the episode that I haven't said, welcome into Film and Whiskey, folks. If this is your first episode, this is a wild one so far. What we do on this podcast is we talk about movies and whiskey, and this season, we're looking at films from the past 20 years, and we're asking the question, does this movie deserve to be considered a modern masterpiece? Now, Brad, this is at least the, third or fourth Denis Villeneuve film we've done on the show. We've done Sicario. Yeah. We've done Arrival. We've done Dune Part 2. So this must be 4. I don't think we've done any others. But we've done...
Yeah, I think that's
We've done enough that we know our boy Denis likes himself a very dark tale. And this is his first big American film. So I think it's worth us talking about, it's worth us exploring, and it's worth getting into Brad Explains.
Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part of the show where Brad breaks down the plot of the film that he has just seen, often for the first time. Brad, this was absolutely your first time with the movie Prisoners, a film that I totally forgot has a runtime of 2 hours and 33 minutes. This is a long movie.
Oh, it's so long, dude.
It's very long. It is. It is only like 15 minutes shorter than Dune Part 2. That's how long this movie is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say that Dune 2 feels longer, though. This movie moves fast, man.
There's a lot going on in this movie. It's a very simple premise, but it gets very twisty. It's very plot heavy. So, Brad, I'm going to go ahead and let you explain the movie. Folks, if you have not seen Prisoners, do we want to say go watch it and then come back? It's a very heavy movie. I think that, like, if you've seen films like Brad said Mystic River or, Zodiac, I think would be a good comparison, or Seven, like Fincher's.
Gone.
I think Fincher's Seven is a pretty good comparison point to, like, the kind of heaviness and griminess and grossness that you're going to get here. And if that's your bag, go watch Prisoners, come back and join us for the rest of the episode. Brad, you get 60 seconds to spoil this movie, and go.
Prisoners is a film that follows Keller Dover, played by Hugh Jackman, as he tries to solve the mystery of his and his friends' abducted daughters. Jake Gyllenhaal plays a detective who is on the case as they follow a promising lead of a creepy RV with a creepy Paul Dano, which kind of leads somewhere, kind of leads nowhere. Eventually they find out that it's Paul Dano's creepy aunt, who has been doing it for decades now with her husband, and they're evil and bad, and they want to turn people into monsters. And in the middle of all that, Hugh Jackman tortures Paul Dano. And it's pleasant and just a easy breezy, lemon squeezy kind of a movie.
It certainly is, man. Just a delight, this movie, I tell you. All right, so I'm going to kind of walk through the movie in terms of, like, things I thought in sequential order. And the very first thing I thought when
Hold on.
Go ahead.
You didn't let me finish. I said we need to get in Brad Explains, so I don't spoil anything, because I got thoughts, Bob.
Oh, okay. So my thoughts are getting put on the back burner. Go ahead. Give your thoughts,
yes.
Brad. You already
yes,
spoiled.
They are.
You're supposed to bury the lead, man. Wait for things to come up, dude. All right. Give your thoughts.
Denis knows where this movie is going. He knows that the entire purpose of the film is to portray how we are all prisoners of our own story. And yet, at every single turn that there could have been any emotional catharsis, he fades to black.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Every single time you could have any sense of, like, okay, like this all bad stuff has happened, and yet, oh wait, we just faded to black. There's no catharsis. And I think that's my problem with this movie.
Yeah.
It's that
it's bleak.
If you're going to make a movie about one of the most horrifying thing that can happen on this earth, you can't take away the emotional catharsis of seeing things be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that is a capital C choice from Denis. And I think I'm just in utter disagreement that is a okay way to make a movie.
So,
like, it would be better if the movie ended with the children dying and allowing you to sit with a grieving family.
Yikes. You heard it here first, folks. Brad G., huge proponent of the bleakest possible ending to this film.
I am a huge proponent of movies being an emotional medium that allow us to... It brings things out of us that we might not normally be able to do in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And a movie that refuses to allow you to have catharsis, I think it's a... I don't... what's the word I want to use? I don't want to say, like... I think there's malintention.
Interesting.
Of some sort that you would refuse to allow the audience to experience catharsis.
All right, let me respond, please.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting episode for us because I don't know that you've ever jumped on a call to discuss a movie as soon after the movie is finished as we just did today. Like, you literally just finished this movie. And I can tell that, like, you're still grappling with it. And that's really cool because usually we give ourselves like a day to kind of collect our thoughts and put some structure around things. This is a very visceral response from you, which is great. I think it's going to make for an interesting episode. I'm with you, man. I think that the utter bleakness of this movie is intentional. Denis is purposely not allowing any emotional catharsis to happen, and it's underscoring his point that the world is kind of a cruel and punishing place. And it's a place that we make cruel and punishing through our own machinations. However, I also think that part of the reason it doesn't totally work, and this is crazy. Have you ever seen the movie Seven, Brad?
I have not.
Okay. And that's another one I've been kicking the can down the road on. It is perhaps the bleakest crime movie ever. And the general premise of the movie, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a serial killer who is murdering people in the pattern of the 7 deadly sins. So basically punishing people for their sins. And the ending of that movie is just horrifically bleak. But
what's in the box?
Yes. So it goes all the way with its premise. And I feel like this one kind of pulls its punch a little bit at the end. So I'm with you. Like, I don't want to see the kidnapped children meet their demise in this film. However, there's something about the, like, oh, things kind of ended well, and maybe things will kind of end well for Hugh Jackman's character, who, spoiler alert, is literally still a prisoner hoping to be rescued at the end of this film. And those weird moments of not even hope, but like, I don't know, respite from what's been going on just don't really fit with the way the film has been made for 2.5 hours. And so I'm with you that, like, there are certain points where you wish for a little bit of relief and the movie is unrelenting. And then as it hurtles towards its climax, it tries to give moments of relief when it needs to just fully commit. Does that make sense?
100%. The only relief that you get are the small moments of humanity that Hugh Jackman shows. Like, dude, when he is about to turn on the hot or cold water tap on Paul Dano again, and instead the tears roll down his face. Yep. Like, that is the extent of the respite you get for this movie.
Yeah.
It's freaking brutal, man.
So I want to dive into performances, but before we do that, let me go back to what I was going to say right after Brad explains. The very first thought I had about this movie is, as the credits are coming up that just say, like, the title of the movie, and it's in this, like, really cheap looking, like, Times New Roman font that you could just tell, like, somebody did a drop down on Microsoft Word. I was like, who else does cheap fonts like that? What does this remind me of? And I was like, oh, it reminds me of the beginning of, like, every Clint Eastwood movie. Like, sure. The fade in on the town. And throughout the first 10 or so minutes of the movie, I was like, oh, this really is like an Eastwood movie. This is like, it reminded me of Mystic River. It reminded me of, he did a great movie called Changeling about 15 years ago. And I was prepared for the Eastwood moral quandary movie. And I feel like this might have actually been a better movie if it was more of an Eastwood movie and less of a plot-driven, twisty serial killer movie.
Yeah.
Because it kind of hints at, I mean, obviously it portrays like Hugh Jackman is a very broken man who is willing to go to some horrific places and really not, like, he kind of feels conflicted at parts, doesn't make many apologies for it. And then you watch like Terrence Howard and Viola Davis and like the places they're willing to go. And it's
bro, when Viola Davis stops Terrence Howard from letting him out.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I like that they explicitly show that people will allow their own morals to get bent or broken when they're pushed far enough or they feel like they need to. It's an interesting psychological experiment. I just think Eastwood is way better at plumbing the depths of those things than what Villeneuve does in this movie, because ultimately those things take a back seat to like, but who's the real killer? Do we pull the rug out from under you now and do this twisty thing? Like, how are we going to find these kids? And I feel bad saying this, but like the heart of the movie really isn't even in the like, will the kids get found as an audience member, right? Because halfway through the movie, they've like given up on ever finding these kids. It's in like, what is this going to do to these people's souls? And I feel like about 2/3 of the way through the movie, they just stop exploring that and they have to like wrap it up with a bunch of plot stuff.
Totally agreed. I think structurally, one of my issues with this movie, putting all the morals of it aside, I do think that at the end of the day, the creepy aunt who's very obviously the kidnapper, like that was the big thing for me. If you're going to make this movie feel like a whodunit mystery thriller, then like do a better job of hiding the real suspect. As I don't know about you the first time you saw it. It felt very obvious to me that Paul Dano's creepy aunt was the one who did it. The last third of the movie just kind of felt like well, I guess we got to wrap it up now. We're almost 2.5 hours in, so wrap it up.
And it wraps up so neatly. Like every character that you've been like, who's this random guy? You know, she confesses to like, oh, we kidnapped that kid too. He's just a really messed up kid now that we let him go eventually. It's like, wait a minute, like you guys still live in the same city? Or like, what's going on here? And I think that like comparing it to Zodiac from earlier in the season, a movie that you weren't crazy about. And it's funny because I think Gyllenhaal got on a real tear with these dark, like between Zodiac, this and Nocturnal Animals. Like my guy was in a state for a while there. But at least in Zodiac, they kind of just let the loose ends be loose ends. And it's acknowledged that like that's part of a police investigation. You're going to get introduced to some real weird dudes and think that they must have done it. And then they just didn't. And I kind of appreciate that more than what they do in this movie, which is like everybody you've met in this movie is going to tie back into this in this one monologue that our Bond villain lady is going to give at the end of the film. It didn't quite click for me.
It works too neatly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially in a movie that's all about like chaos and messiness, like to wrap up that neatly just feels false.
I think the most fascinating like plot mystery intrigue that happens is the fact that the wife doesn't know that her husband, who committed all these crimes with her, had himself locked in a priest's basement so he would die and not kidnap children anymore.
Is like, that what the priest says? Or is it my read on that scene when Gyllenhaal's like forcing him down the cellar and he says like he came back to me. I convinced him to come back here again. I just thought the priest just locked him in there until he died. I didn't realize that he let himself do it.
Yeah, the priest said he forced me to put him down there because he didn't want to commit these crimes anymore.
Oh, interesting.
And like that to me, it was the thing I walked away from going like, that's an interesting, like well-written, sucks me in kind of plot point of like this dude who has done abject evil with his wife and like finally hits a true breaking point where he feels like his only penance is to starve himself to death in a pre-spaceman.
Yeah.
Like, that to me was the most fascinating plot point of the whole movie.
Well, and it sounds like we're complaining a lot about this movie. I think this is a good movie. Like, not even a pretty good movie. I think it's a good movie. It just kind of misses greatness, and I think that it mostly misses greatness in the script. The script wraps up too tidily, and the reveal at the end that Melissa Leo's character is the villain, she really does give like a Bond-level monologue, and then, walks him out to the car, puts the gun to his head, says like, "This is our war against God." And like, yes, we gathered that from what you said prior in the film. Like, I get it. I know what you're doing here. B, like, human beings will never communicate like that. Like, no one will ever say, "I need you to understand that my evil plot is a metaphor, and this is the metaphor." It's like, it just doesn't work that way,
I don't know, man. What about the Manson murders? What did he say? I'm the devil,
and I'm here to do devil shit. That might not be verbatim. All right, let's talk about these performances. This is a kind of unnecessarily stacked cast. Like,
yeah,
obviously you think about Jackman and Gyllenhaal, but Maria Bello, Jackman's wife, is a like moderately famous actress in the mid 2000s to 2010s. And then you've got like Terrence Howard, who is struggling post Iron Man and getting cut from Marvel, and so they get him here. Viola Davis is on the come up after The Help, and it's like, this is not the kind of performance you would get Viola Davis in after 2013, but she just happens to be here. So I think let's talk a little bit about the two main performances. Then maybe we could take a break.
Mention Paul Dano?
Paul Dano. And then the other creepy guy, David Dastmalchian, who is just made a name for himself playing creepy guys. Apparently like a lovely person. And a good actor,
really,
but
I feel like it's him and Paul Dano that any casting director gets a note like, okay, we need a super creepy dude, like kind of androgynous, somewhere between 25 and 45.
Yeah, and they're like,
we got Paul Dano and David Dastmalchian.
Do you want him to have a super bony face or like a very round cherubic face?
Pudgy face.
That's it. Those are the two differentiators. Let's start with the two people at the top, Brad, and then I think we could probably go to break. Jackman, I think, is the better one for conversation because this is one of his bigger dramatic roles, kind of in the midst of his 11 Wolverine appearances or however many it's been. Yeah. And I think it's a really good performance. I also think that sometimes when these guys that are coming from superhero movies get a chance to go do something else and reset, you can almost see them trying to relearn how to not be a superhero, like on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jackman has moments where it's like not just really good, but believable. Like when the emotion takes over. And then there are other times where it's like, oh, he's just really going for it. The first scene where Terrence Howard is helping hold him up against the wall and he's got the hammer and he's like destroying the sink. And that was like a big, oh, Hugh Jackman did this unexpectedly and everybody was terrified. And I'm watching that like, if I'm another actor in this scene, I'm like silently pleading with him with my eyes to like dial it back a little. There are moments where he goes so over the top that it almost takes me out of the movie.
I think I kind of disagree on that.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know, man. If my 6, 7, 8-year-old daughter was taken, I don't know if I wouldn't do very similar things. I wouldn't do very similar things because I'm a good person.
Sure you are. Sure you are. That's what this movie posits, Brad. Are you?
Let the record show that Brad G would not do those things. It didn't seem over the top to me.
Okay.
If someone would want to do those things.
I'm not saying necessarily that like his actions seem his actions are obviously over the top, but like I think even the way that he portrays an unhinged man felt more like a guy trying really hard to play an unhinged man than a believably unhinged man, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's the quiet moments for him that I already mentioned that make the wild moments believable.
I agree.
Like because he's not one-dimensional, he's not just like a singular thread. There's an entire tapestry to his character. I believe the anger and rage and violence because I believe the tears, the prayers, the inability to say, as I forgive those who have forgiven it. It's those moments that make me believe this is a well-rounded, fleshed out character, and I don't mind the ridiculousness as much.
All right, let's talk about Gyllenhaal then, because I said all that about Jackman specifically because I think Gyllenhaal just kind of runs laps around him in this movie. Like, Jackman may not be a one-dimensional character, but I think the way he chooses to play that character limits his range a little bit. And I think ultimately, even though Gyllenhaal's not top billed in this movie, this is kind of Gyllenhaal's movie. I think he really runs away with it in a way that, like, you know, you had commented on his Zodiac performance as I don't quite know what he's going for here in this character, and it didn't click for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gyllenhaal is just like in complete command of this movie, dude.
Well, the reason I like him better in this movie is that they give you just enough fleshed out of who he is, like just a few tiny comments of like, I grew up in a group home. He's wearing a Freemason's ring throughout the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just enough hints of like, if he didn't become a police officer, he might have ended up as a serial killer. Like that. I like his character here, and he has the tics, the facial tics, and he explodes just often enough that you're like, oh, this is a real human being really struggling with understanding his own emotions, understanding what's happening in this case. He just nails everything about this role. I think this is my favorite Gyllenhaal performance.
It's really good, man. And I think that he's got to be the MVP of the movie for me. I can't think of somebody else that would be.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, nobody else has enough meat to chew on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Viola Davis is really good, but she's just kind of a background character. Terrence Howard is basically like, hey, can you be kind of a sissy and not stand up to Hugh Jackman as he's wild? And he nails it. He does a great job at that. But you know, there's nothing too wild to write home about. Really, it's Jackman that have everything to work with.
I did find myself throughout the movie wondering, like, I wonder if there's going to be a read on this film that, like, Brad and I interpret the Jackman character just completely differently. I mean, because I think you would agree, like, the movie does not want you to root for Hugh Jackman or even approve of his methods, right? I think everyone has a spectrum of like, hey, I understand what would cause somebody to do this. But even within that, like, I really liked the Terrence Howard character. I didn't find him to be a sissy. Like, I felt like he was the only one that was like, you guys, like, we can't do, this is not right. We can't go forward with this. And then finding himself not necessarily just getting peer pressured, but also like, yeah, I guess there is a little part of me that kind of wants these answers. And he's the most conflicted person in the whole movie. And I found that he played that super well. Like, is there a lot of tears? Absolutely. I don't necessarily know that I would say that makes him like a sissy. I just think that he's probably got the strongest moral backbone of anybody in the movie. And to watch him even have that moral backbone get bent was one of the more compelling characters for me.
No, he hands the reins over at multiple points in the movie. He has morals, tries to stand up for them, and then people just bulldoze over him.
Right.
Like Hugh Jackman bulldozed over him with a hammer and iron conviction, and his wife bulldozes him over with a soft word.
Yeah.
So I like, in my mind, he is portrayed, even when the thing that cemented it in my brain is when Viola Davis and he show up at Hugh Jackman's house, it's the way Hugh Jackman looks at him like, you betrayed me, bro. Like we were in this together. And the way he looks at Hugh Jackman is just kind of like a beaten puppy. Like, oh, well, my wife had to know and you had to know. And I'm caught between my boyfriend and my girlfriend. I mean, and I can't.
Yeah, it is. I would just wonder, maybe I'm just the most like him in terms of how I think I would react in a situation like this. Because, like, watching them.
So I'm Hugh Jackman.
You're clearly Hugh Jackman. I don't trust you at all, bro. But, like, I think that watching the psychological manipulation of him was really interesting. Like, the way Viola talks to him, like, implying that if we let off of this guy, you will be responsible if something bad happens to our daughter. And that, like, accusation sitting with him and ultimately causing him to be kind of cowardly in that way, it's at least understandable to me. I didn't look at him and be like, oh, sure, you freaking coward. I was like, yeah, dude, I get it, man. Like, if somebody came at me and said, like, we can stop, but it's all your fault if something goes wrong, that's hard to live with, dude.
Yeah, 100%. And the fact that Viola Davis trusts Keller more to, like, save their daughter than Terrence, like, that is the most emasculating thing I think I've ever seen on film.
Well,
it's like, hey, buddy, you need to step aside and let our big, jacked white friend take over.
And Brad, if I can awkwardly segue us into our whiskey for the day, what she's ultimately saying is you need to prevent these beloved members of our family from becoming almost old bones. Brad, it is time to get into our bourbon. What do you say, man?
Let's do it.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
All right, today we are checking out Almost Old Bones Bourbon. This is a 9-year whiskey. It's called Almost Old Bones 9-Year Reserve. This is batch number 1, which is interesting to me, Brad, because I've literally never heard of this brand before. This was included in a bunch of samples we received from our buddy Zach Johnston. I thought it sounded cool. And it's, when I saw the name Almost Old Bones, I figured, oh, this is going to be like a 2-year whiskey. This is a cool way of them saying this is not quite old enough. No, it's 9 years old. I was a little shocked by the title here.
Yeah, so the whiskey comes from Backbone Bourbon Company, which is located in Indianapolis, Indiana. And they start in 2014. They are sourcing their whiskey. Originally, they had a supplier that stopped supplying them because they didn't have enough representation or something. And so they were like, oh, we wish our supplier had a little more backbone and like helped us out. And that's where they got the name.
There it is.
Yeah, you see what they did there? They have a flagship product, Backbone Uncut, and they have an old product called Old Bones, which is a 10+ year bourbon. And this specific bottle comes from some barrels that they were like, this is 9-year product, and it's way too good to let it go any further. But it's not our Old Bones at 10+ years, and it's not our regular stuff at like 5 or 6 years. So they decided to make a new SKU. They called it Almost Old Bones. It comes in with a mash bill of 75 corn, 15 rye, 10 malted barley. It looks like it was distilled in Bardstown, Kentucky. So, I wonder where that happened. And it's 110 proof.
Yeah, and at the time that it was released, the retail price on this was $89. I'm not sure if that's gone up or down. This is a little over a year old as a SKU, so I'm excited to dive in, man. It's been a while since we've had a good, well-aged bourbon. You've drank it already. I'm drinking it live, so why don't you give us your nosing notes?
Dude, this is just a really beautiful honey, caramel, apple peel, brown sugar, like... It's got all sorts of really deep, rich bourbon notes going on. With the honey is what stood out to me of like a little bit of a lightness to the flavor that accentuates all of the really rich notes I get. Really beautiful on the nose, Bob. I give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's been a minute since I've had a nose that reminds me of some of those great classic full proof or higher proof bourbons from the big boys. This reminds me a little bit of like a Wild Turkey rare breed on the nose. Even more so, it reminds me of 1792 full proof. So I'm wondering if Barton might have actually distilled this for them. It's really spicy on the nose. And I think that the 15% rye is really coming through here. But there's a layer of almost like a saline kind of thing too. It smells a little bit like not quite salted caramel, but more like a salted maple. I really, really like this, man. And it is closer to a classic bourbon than anything we've had in a while. I'm at a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, and the palate just continues to improve upon the nose, Bob. It gets a little bit oaky, but in a really beautiful, enhancing type of way. There is tons of brown sugar. There's apple. The creaminess and vanilla, like I feel like I just had a big scoop of like homemade vanilla ice cream at the county fair. Like there are all sorts of really rich flavors. It almost gets spicy enough that it feels like a fall apple cider. Like there's a little bit of cinnamon there. I like this a lot. I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10.
I don't find that it has quite enough sweetness to be like a Bob Book staple. It really stays on the spicy side. And this is like super prickly on the tongue. You probably could have convinced me that this was even higher proof than 110 because it drinks barrel strength. That said, I think that this is right in line with a lot of those whiskeys, Brad, that like when we go to Kentucky Bourbon Festival every year and we line up at that tent of all the single barrels that have been picked, This is like barrel strength Bardstown, Kentucky whiskey. I really like this a lot. I do wish it was a little bit more viscous and a little sweeter, but I think that like even though it's not my preferred wheelhouse, I can't go any lower than an 8 out of 10 on the palate.
The finish has like a little bit of oak char going on. It's got brown sugar, the vanilla sticks around, and it definitely gets more spicy on the back end. I still like it a lot. I think the palate is the real all-star here, but I will give it an 8 out of 10 on the finish.
Yeah, I think that it gets, man, I feel like it was maybe last week that I was talking about the kind of minerality. This gets a little bit of like that mineral water quality again for me. Not quite like irony or metallic, but it kind of tips into that. I don't know, maybe some salt, maybe some like limestone. It's a little bit oaky and it loses all sweetness on the finish. And so the finish is my least favorite part of this. Now, again, I don't think that it's like out of character for what I've tasted so far. It's just not my preferred thing. So I'm going to give it a 7.5 here. And I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 on the balance. Just because it is not my favorite kind of bourbon doesn't mean that the kind of bourbon it is in any way out of character. Like, this is a very cohesive drinking experience. I like this a lot. I'm at an 8 out of 10.
I'm also at an 8 out of 10 on balance. I think that they put together a really great grouping of flavors, and I'm kind of with them. Like, if I tasted this out of the barrel, I also would be like, we can't wait any longer. This is delicious as is. I'd be very nervous about it souring, becoming a little too oaky if it was left in the barrel any longer. Now, I will say, MSRP on this is $90. Everywhere else that I'm seeing it is like $110 to $130. So I don't know, Bob. Do you want to price this at 110? Do you want to price it at 90?
So is that just for the batch one, and because there's like limited supply, or is that for newer batches? You're seeing that?
It looks like they're still on batch one.
Okay.
So I guess if you're in Indiana, you can get it for $90.
Let's go with that then, because it may just be a thing of like the price has gone up because there's more of a limited supply now. And so when they come out, if they come out with a batch 2, I'm sure that it will be closer to 90. At $90, this is still a little bit steep for me. It kind of reminds me of like some of those Hardin's Creeks that we've had from the Jim Beam Company, not the 2-year one, but the more well-aged one, where it's just like, man, you got to really knock my socks off to charge me $90 for a bourbon. Now it's 9 years old. I get that. This is still like a $70 bourbon to me. So I'm going to give it just a 5 out of 10 on value.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We're going to be pretty far off on that. I initially thinking it was 110 was thinking it's about $20 to $30 too expensive. So for me, I think $80 to $90 fits for this product. It's not like an all-star value by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think it's a 5 out of 10. I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's a decent value for what you're getting. And I will say, overall, I was really impressed with this whiskey, Bob.
What are you coming out to, Brad?
I'm at a 40 out of 50.
I'm at a 37.5. So even though I gave it a much lower value score, this is definitely a recommend for me. And it's a pretty solid thumbs up. We're coming out to an average of a 38.75. So kind of just below that 40 mark where we kind of say this is a no-brainer. You've achieved the 40 mark. Brad, is this a qualified recommend, or is this like a absolutely pick it up if you see it anywhere?
No, I would say that if you want a good classic bourbon experience that has a richness and depth that you don't find on most, $40 to $60 bourbons, this is a good pickup.
Mm-hmm. All right, man. Well, that was pretty painless. What do you say we get back into talking about Prisoners, which is not at all painless?
Let's do it, man. I'm ready. All right, everybody. That was Almost Old Bones Bourbon. It feels like it almost hit the right notes for you, Bob.
Almost. It was I think 37.5. Not a bad score by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. It's so funny how, we were 2.5 points apart. I was at a 40. And yet I feel like if you just listen to our audio without any scores, we would be 8 points apart.
And it's also funny sometimes you and I get that impression about each other. And it's I feel like you're super negative on this. And then it's surprise, motherfucker, 37.5.
Right, yeah.
Oh, man. All right, dude. It's time for us to get into 2 facts and a falsehood. And I have to say, I am incredibly disappointed in our friend Patrick Willems. He's a busy man, so I know he's not listening to this. I am debating whether to ever let him back on after giving me 2 freaking losses last week on this, Brad.
The comeback is happening, Bob. I'm going to get you.
All right, let's get into this segment called 2 Facts and a Falsehood.
Brad is gonna try to stump you, Bob. 2 are right and 1 is wrong. 2 facts and a falsehood.
2 Facts and a Falsehood is the part of the show where Brad presents me with 3 items as fact about the making of this movie, one of which is a complete lie. Brad, I haven't tallied up my wins and losses in a couple weeks, but like I said, they have increased by 2 in the loss column, and that freaking sucks. So I'm hoping for some redemption here. We've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes, including today, left on the season. So I'm doing kind of a mad dash to make sure I finish with a winning record here.
Yeah, I think if I'm counting correctly, you're sitting at 10 losses.
Oh.
And I'm guessing probably 13 to 15 wins, something in that area. So a little closer than it has been.
Yeah, it sounds like 16 wins, because there was 1 week where we did not do a 2 facts and a falsehood, given the subject matter of the movie Spotlight. And honestly, we probably could have done the same thing today, man. But you were a trooper.
Yeah, I was sitting there man, how do I write a falsehood or facts and be Yeah, don't worry about the 2 little girls you just watched get kidnapped and the torture you saw Paul Dano experience. Did you know that Denis smokes Lucky Strikes?
You should have done it in like an old-timey game show announcer voice. Like, did you know? That should be the kind of things. Yeah.
And now you know the rest of the story.
All right, man. Hit me with those 2 facts and a falsehood.
Fact number 1, director Denis Villeneuve first met Roger Deakins at the Academy Awards when Denis was up for Best Foreign Language Oscar in 2010. A huge fan of the film, Deakins told Villeneuve that he would love to work with him, and it just so happened that Villeneuve was able to send him the screenplay for Prisoners shortly after. Fact number 2, the impossible maze shown throughout the film was actually created by Adrian Fisher, a famous British maze designer. He allowed it to be used in the film only once he knew that the children in the film did not in fact die. Fact number 3, to play Holly Jones, Melissa Leo wore a gray wig and a foam rubber posterior prepared by costume designer Renee April in order to ground her character. Leo also requested the props assistants to avoid cleaning her glasses after each day's shooting.
All right, so number 2 and number 3 both stick out to me for kind of small-ish reasons. Number 3... because I feel like you could have inserted a commentary about someone's fake butt. It just seems like it could be a Brad G invention.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know,
Brad
right?
Pitt, baby.
I think butts, I think Brad Pitt, you know? Number 2 could potentially be a falsehood because I find it hard to believe that they wanted this maze so badly for this movie that they would be willing to spoil the end of the film to some rando just to use his maze when they could have just easily designed a maze that looked unsolvable for the 3 seconds that it's on screen. And in fact, I think that I've already talked myself into it. Number 3 could very well be the falsehood. I think I'm going to go with 2, Brad. That seems like the biggest stretch to me. So I'm going to lock in number 2 as my falsehood.
Bob, you have nailed it. Once again, this is your season of victories, my friend.
Yeah, not so much, dude. Given that I am coming off 2 consecutive losses, I guess 3 consecutive losses based on last week. So I'm glad to get back in the win column. Nicely done on the falsehood, though. That was a pretty good one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I thought it was pretty decent.
Brad, let's give the listeners a peek behind the curtain here a little bit. How long does it typically take you to do your, like, not just to collate the 2 facts, but to write your falsehood?
It's probably like a 20 to 30 minute process.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I used to find the 2 truths and then write the falsehood. I can't do that anymore because there's like too much information in my head and it makes the creative process difficult. So nowadays I sit down and I just kind of ponder like things about the movie, stuff that I found interesting, stuff that stuck out to me. And I'll like write a few falsehoods and then try to find the one that makes the most sense that might trick you.
I love it, man. I'm glad.
And then it's probably like 10 minutes or so browsing the IMDb page, trying to find innocuous facts about the movie, but facts that are interesting enough that like once you know they're true, it's like, oh, wow, that is kind of interesting. So it's like a hard balance, man.
Well, and you made a good point a little bit ago. Like with a movie like this, it's got to be hard to find facts that don't feel too flippant, that like undermine how heavy of a movie we're talking about.
Yep. Or there's like, one was about Holly Jones. So the character is Alex Jones, his aunt is Holly Jones. And apparently that's like the name of a child in Toronto who was abducted and killed.
Oh,
I'm like, I don't know if that's a fact. I like want to throw in my game here.
Yeah, and I feel like that also might just be a coincidence. Like, I can't imagine that, like, the screenwriter would be like, oh, yeah, let's throw that in here. That would be a horrific thing to do, right?
Let's make the name of the most evil character.
Right.
A child who was abducted. Yeah, that seems a little on the nose in a very not so good way.
All right, man. So we've talked about Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. We've touched a little bit on Terrence Howard, Viola Davis. We haven't really gone in on. Go ahead.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
We never see Terrence Howard in movies anymore.
No.
So anytime I see him, I have to remind our audience that he is into some weird stuff. And not in a bad way. He's just like...
I mean...
maybe not in a good way. He's like into weird maths and like Pythagoras theorem and Platonic ideals and solids. And he is a weird dude. And you should just Google Terrence Howard Platonic solids, I think is his whole thing. It's pretty wild.
He's gone off the deep end a little bit, and he keeps reemerging on podcasts. I want to say he did Rogan a couple years ago, and that was like his big, I'm back. Mm-hmm. Listen to me, now be a scientist. And I've just seen many, many videos of like real scientists being like, I don't know what the hell this dude's talking about. Like this. It's kind of the equivalent of like, if all of the girls from your high school that got really into essential oils for 3 years, instead were Terrence Howard getting into like, I read a science book one time. Here's my thoughts on quantum physics, you know?
It's kind of like Tom Cruise doing Scientology, but instead of like going Zero Dark 30 about Scientology after a while, he just like ramped it up and got more crazy about it. Like that's what it feels like to me.
So Bill Simmons has this great thing that he does on some of his podcasts where he talks about how certain actors get market corrected by a new actor that comes after them and kind of takes all their roles. And I feel like Terrence Howard's in this really interesting place from, 2005 to 2012 or whatever it is. He does Crash and he does Hustle and Flow and he's Oscar nominated. And then, he shows up in this movie. He's obviously an Iron Man. And the unfortunate reality of like being a black star in Hollywood is like there's not a lot of great parts for black males or black females. And so they're all competing against each other. And I feel like he got really typecast as the sensitive leading black man in Hollywood for a while there. He always cried in his movies. And he kind of market corrected like Cuba Gooding Jr. had come, a decade prior to him. And by this point, he's hitting about 40. His roles are starting to dry up. Terrence Howard comes. And then Terrence Howard kind of makes his own career nosedive. And it's not for a couple more years after this, but I feel like now the person who's kind of in that typecast role in a lot of ways is Sterling K. Brown. If you've ever watched This Is Us, like he's the guy that you get in your movie when you need an African-American man and you need him to cry in a movie. And like I said, it's an unfortunate reality that we typecast people like this. But I do miss seeing Terrence Howard. I think that like regardless of how cuckoo he may or may not be in real life, he's a really good actor, man.
I don't know if I've ever been able to separate the kookiness from the acting because I never really saw him in anything other than Iron Man growing up. And so for me, it's like, oh yeah, he was in Iron Man and got replaced by Cuba Gooding Jr. And then I saw videos of him trying to explain.
He got replaced by Don Cheadle.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, replaced by Don Cheadle. So he was a replaceable actor that I eventually saw him trying to explain crazy, weird, philosophical math.
Yeah.
And I've never had a super great impression of him, I suppose.
Oh, that stinks. Yeah, I like him a lot. Come back, Terrence Howard. Drop the science stuff and start acting again. Brad, anybody else in the cast that you think we should touch on? Like, should we talk a little bit more about Paul Dano or Melissa Leo, or do you think we've kind of hit what we need to hit here in terms of the performances?
I think Paul Dano is really good. Especially his performance is one of those ones where he plays everything so close to the chest that like his role takes on different nuances as the film progresses. And as you kind of waver on whether or not he's guilty, and then he like chokes his dog and you're like, oh yeah, he's totally guilty. And then you find out at the end that he's like semi-partially guilty, but mostly not. He's mostly just a traumatized kid himself.
Yep. And
you're like, his performance takes on so many different layers when you know the entire backstory that like, you're like, yeah, this is a great performance with the tiny amount of screen time that he has. I mean, his eyeballs have a lot of screen time in the film. His whole body doesn't have quite as much.
Yeah, man, I think it's a good performance. Part of what pulls me out of Paul Dano's performance is that he's always struck me as a really intelligent actor who's able to play slimy. I think There Will Be Blood is maybe my favorite performance of his. And so watching him play a person with an IQ of a 10-year-old is a little bit like you're watching a smart person try to figure out in real time how to portray limited mental capability. It's also so similar to his Riddler from the Batman that came out a couple years ago, which I just did not like that movie. That's kind of I feel like Dano's getting a little bit typecast here as well. If I can kind of pivot us for a second, the Paul Dano character. So at the end of the film, it's revealed not only is he not really Alex Jones, he is this kid who had been abducted 25 years prior and never returned because this family just kept him and like is now making him an accomplice to all the horrific things they're doing to children. And you only get this at the very end of the movie, but there's like a newspaper headline that's like, hey, Paul Dano got returned to his original family. And it's like, wait a minute, is that how that would work? Like this guy has been party to like numerous child abductions and or murders and is clearly like almost mute from being so traumatized. And you aren't going to institutionalize that guy? Like he just gets to go home? What? That doesn't seem like it's going to end well.
Yeah, his family's going to be totally chill about the whole thing. It's going to be a very easy transition. Nothing to see here. Moving on.
Well, that coupled with the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal gets mad during an interrogation that's taking too long, goes in and assaults the guy, who then grabs his gun and commits suicide in front of him. And they're like, damn, Jake, tough day at the office. All right, get back out there and keep knocking on doors. It's like, wait, hold on. You're not suspended? You're not off the case?
Not just knock on doors. Go to the relative of the man who was just kept in captivity for a week and tortured, within an inch of his life. Go let her know what was going on.
I trust you with this information.
You're the guy to do that.
You're clearly in a good headspace right now. So just go do that for us.
Exactly. And honestly, that's kind of my thing with this movie, where there's a lot about it that's really great and really done well. Like Deakins is a master. He's the best. But there's stuff like this that I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't know if this was, I don't know if it was well thought out. I don't know if there was plans for it. It feels like an early effort from a really great director that he would have cleaned up a lot if he made it 10 years later.
I agree. And I think he would have done more work on the script himself. I remember seeing this movie and being like, oh, that was a really good movie. And then the following year that Sicario came out and didn't really make a huge splash at the box office. But I remember seeing like, this is the guy that did Prisoners. And I was like, oh man, I should go watch this movie. I remember seeing it when they still had the Dollar Theater. I went to the Dollar Theater and watched Sicario. And I was like, oh, this dude took a jump. This is a big movie. It's a huge undertaking, and he is in total command of the material here. And I think revisiting Prisoners, Brad, my big takeaway is that Denis Villeneuve is a master filmmaker who, at this point of his career, the material was dictating what he could do rather than him being in control of the material.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to love about Prisoners, and it really does point to where he's going to go. I'm with you, man. The fact that Sicario came out, you said a year later?
Either 1 or 2 years later.
Yeah, is mind-boggling to me, because I really do think it is a pretty vastly superior movie to this. Yeah, and that's, like I said, it's not to put this down. I do struggle with like the morality of taking your audience to a place of emotional destitution and then leaving them there. I don't think that that's what people deserve for having spent their money on watching your movie. And not from the sense that like we should just feel happy feelings from movies. I think that it needs to come more full circle. But even beyond that, there's a few things in this movie that he just needed to work on, and he does it quickly and becomes such an incredible director.
Well, it sounds like we're tipping into final scores here, but before we get there, we have one more segment to get to. It's our final segment of the day, which we call Let's Make It a Double.
We're near the end of the episode, so thanks for listening to the Film and Whiskey Show. Let's pair another film with this one, even if it's a struggle. It's our final segment of the day, now let's make it a double.
Let's Make It a Double is presented by Blackwood Distilling Company. It's the part of the show where we pick a movie to pair up with this one to make the perfect double feature. Brad, we've thrown out a lot of titles today. I don't really have any, cute, clever thing here. I think the best movie to pair this with...
I really hope you don't.
Yeah, right. The best movie to pair this with in terms of just this is a dour, sad, heavy movie would be Seven. I don't personally like that flavor of film. So I would choose to pair this with a movie like Gone Baby Gone, which is also very much about similar thematic territory of a missing child, but it does a better job to me of asking those thornier questions and leaving you in ambiguity instead of just in a bleak, dire place. So I prefer that movie to this. I think they'd make an interesting pairing. But once again, I keep coming back to the fact Ben Affleck's first movie, to me, is his best movie. So I'm going to continue to recommend Gone Baby Gone.
That is actually what I was going to pair it with as well, Bob.
Oh, nice.
I think Gone Baby Gone has the same, a similar, level of moral ambiguity. It feels like it comes more full circle, though. I think that he's more responsible with the things that he shows you. And I actually think there's multiple times throughout the film where Denis pulls his punches. And whether it's giving you catharsis or going as far as this grossness goes, I feel like Gone Baby Gone is more willing to dive into the grossness of what takes place and what happens, and more willing to go into the catharsis and the feeling better. Mm-hmm. I prefer that. If I had to pair it with something else, I think I'd probably go with Mystic River. I know I mentioned it earlier, but I think that you are right in calling out a Clint Eastwood comparison here. And I think that would make for a very sad, depressing night of cinema. But you could watch this with Up, and it would be a sad, depressing night of theater.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Those are our picks for Let's Make It a Double. But no matter what you choose to pair it up with, you can always make it a double with Blackwood Distilling Company. And once again, go to our special link on bourbonoutfitter.com. That's bourbonoutfitter.com/filmwhiskey. And if you use our code FILMWHISKEY at checkout, you'll get 5% off your bottle of Blackwood Distilling. Brad, I've been sipping on this Rye 105 that I just brought back from Kentucky. Freaking delicious, man. To the point where I don't know if we need to just dedicate a whole episode to talking about it, but one of my favorite, in the rotation ryes right now.
Yeah, it sits next to my desk, and whenever I need a drink, like Don Draper, in the middle of the workday, I pour myself some Blackwood 105 rye.
There you go. All right, man, let's give this movie some final scores. I think this is an 8 out of 10 for me. And it's it is both overachieving what a somewhat limited script is doing, and it is underachieving at what I know Denis is capable of. And so it's a weird, sometimes we talk about it's an 8, but it's a really good 8, bordering on an 8.5. Mm-hmm. It's an 8 in every way that a movie could be an 8 for me. So that's kind of where I'm landing.
Yeah. I think that craft-wise, this is I'm with you. This is an 8 out of 10 movie through and through. I think that I personally just didn't vibe with it. And I understand why, and I don't necessarily hold it against Denis. It just doesn't totally work for me. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Oh, okay. I'm glad we watched it because it was kind of the big glaring hole in our Denis Villeneuve filmography. And I'm glad I revisited it because I haven't watched it in a decade. So it's good. I think I probably, I don't know, it's on par with Arrival for me, a movie that I don't feel like totally works. It's definitely a step down from Sicario. And then I think both Dune movies easily surpass this one for me.
Yeah, I would say so. I think Sicario might still be my favorite from him. with probably Dune 2 and Arrival being right behind it. All three of those films are just so incredible. I can't recommend Denis enough. He's such a great filmmaker.
And yet I feel like he's never quite had a 10 out of 10 movie yet. Even Sicario is like a 9, bordering on a 9.5 for me. But sure. I just want that one perfect movie that is undeniable from him. And he hasn't quite gotten there yet.
I totally agree. And I think for a lot of people, Dune 2 will be that. I just feel like, once again, with Dune 2, he is so restricted by the source material that he can only do so much. And the only so much is like a 9.5 out of 10 fantasy epic that I'm so happy he brought to the big screen. I'm with you. It's not a 10 out of 10. It doesn't have his stamp on it the way some of his other movies do.
All right, so it's a 7.5 on average from us, but we'd like to know what you guys think of the movie Prisoners. Brad, I'm going to assume that it's a no from you on Modern Masterpiece. Is that fair to say?
Yep. Yeah,
I'm going to say the same. I'm going to say the same. I think there are better crime, procedural movies. I think there are better serial killer movies. I think there are better moral quandary movies than this in the 21st century. So it's a no from me. But again, you can find us on all of our social media channels to tell us what you think of the movie Prisoners. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at Film Whiskey.
Or if you'd like to join the conversation, we have our very own Discord server where we talk all things movie, whiskey, and pretty much anything else going on in our lives. So if you want to find a nice community, you can head on over to our Discord server. There's a link at the end of every single one of our show notes.
Next week, another movie I have not watched in a while that I'm really excited to revisit. It's the 2019 Sam Mendes film, 1917. So we're going into World War I territory here, Brad.
The most uplifting of times, Bob.
All right, so join us for that next week. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.